Good evening, everyone. We are back in the studio and in a much quieter, much less noisy, and much better connected location than we were this time last week. For everybody who watched our live webcast last Friday night from the American Whiskey Convention in Philadelphia, thank you so very much for sticking with us to the end. And I owe you a big apology because I did not know just how bad the quality of that video stream was until I got home and looked at it on YouTube and went, oh, God, because what I see going out is what comes out of our cameras on set. And so I couldn't see just how bad it was. But to all of you who have stuck with us, thank you so much for your patience. As I mentioned last week, what happened was that going out on the road after months here in the studio, we had some problems with Wi-Fi connection, so we tried tethering the laptop to the iPhone to AT&T. There's our weak link right there, those three letters, gang, and that's where we sort of fell apart. But we are back in the studio, and literally I'm back in the studio because I got back in from Nevada last night at about 12:30 in the morning because I was out in Fallon, Nevada, about an hour or so east of Reno, visiting with Ashley and Colby Frey at Frey Ranch Distillers. How are you guys?
Good. Hey, Mark.
Great. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming on again on such short notice, and just because I asked you while I was out there because we're having a lot of fun, and I wanted to get you back on the show because Colby, I know we had you on last year, but we had not talked with Ashley before,
Right.
And I sort of wanted to talk to the two of you about building a really true grain-to-glass distillery from scratch out in a non-traditional distilling area. Give us the story on the ranch itself, because I know, Colby, it goes back to before Nevada statehood in your family, right?
Yeah, so my family's been continually farming here in northern Nevada since 1854, and Nevada didn't even become a state until 1864, and we've been continually farming ever since. And so, the importance of that is that we know how to grow the grains in our specific climate and our soil, and that was really the inspiration to the distillery, is that we were growing really high quality grains and really just selling them on the open market, but we never got to experience a final product. And so Ashley and I, got together and said we loved whiskey, and what better way to showcase our grains than to make it into whiskey. And I had always loved whiskey and thought what a better way to like experience it and let other people experience the grains that we're growing right here on the farm.
Yeah, and keeping everything in-house was something that we wanted to do from day one. So growing the grains, really nurturing them in the field, and carrying that through all the way to when we bottle and sell in our tasting room was something we were very passionate about. And being hands-on founders, we wanted to touch every little part of our business.
Actually, we are getting just a little bit of audio glitching on you, and I'm not sure why. But if you want, I don't know if there's anything you can adjust at your end, but the really cool thing I found when I was out there was that you guys pretty much built almost everything except the still yourself, right?
Yeah, we installed everything ourselves. We did all of our own design, all of our electrical, plumbing, steam lines, gas lines. Everything was done ourselves. When we got our still, it was one of a kind. It's actually a continuous still and a pot still. And it was the first time Vendome had ever made. I mean, they made hundreds or maybe thousands of pot stills and continuous stills, but the first time they made them to kind of work in unison together. And so they took a couple pictures in the factory, disassembled it. And we literally had to reassemble the entire still just looking at these two pictures. And it was really kind of a blessing in disguise, because we really understand the insides, the basic principles of operation of the still. And it really allows us to operate it better because we really understand the still and how it's set up. And it also allows us to fix it if there's any problems. We know exactly where to look first and really understand it a lot better that way.
Tell me about the process of learning all that and coming up with the idea to do both a column still and pot still. You have two column stills and a pot still that work together to essentially double distill, right?
Yeah. And so, your traditional continuous still has a continuous still and a doubler, but they both work continuously. And so what we found is that it's really hard to take an efficient heads and a tails cut and really get the product the way that you want it. You can't you can't fine tune it. You can't tailor it the same way as you can off of a continuous still. And so from the beginning, we knew that we wanted to get the best quality, but the problem has always been with pot stills is you can't get a lot of quantity out of them. And so we felt like by having a continuous still, basically strip the alcohol. So we taken about an 8% alcohol from the mash as it's going in the stills. We cut it down to about 40 to 45% alcohol. And then we put that in the pot still. And that way we're able to get 5 times more volume per batch in the pot still. So we can get quantity and quality while still taking the heads and the tails cuts that you can do really efficiently and accurately on a pot still.
Tell me, let's go into the farming process now, because you're growing all the grains yourself on the farm, and there's a stereotype that people think of in Nevada. Area 51, Las Vegas, desert. You guys are up in the mountains near Reno, where it's actually a lot more temperate, and you can farm up there. It's not all just desert and scrub, right?
Yeah, we're in a beautiful area. It's Fallon, Nevada. It's the oasis of Nevada. And we have an abundance of water. It comes from what we call the Sierra snowmelt. It comes from both sides of Lake Tahoe through the Truckee and the Carson rivers to a reservoir where we can get all of our water. And so we have a beautiful, lush, green valley here where we're located. But if you go 15, 20 miles in any direction, you'll hit desert. And there's literally desert from us all the way to Las Vegas, which is 360 miles. And so we're in this beautiful area that can grow really high quality because of our climate, but also our beautiful water and our good soil. And so we're really fortunate to be in this ideal location that can grow high quality crops.
We also have 4 distinct growing seasons here. So we don't get up to 120 like Las Vegas. We will get up to about 110, but short periods. But we get down to 0 degrees in the winter.
Yeah, so that really helps with the aging, the expansion and contraction during those hot winters or hot summers. It expands in the barrels. During the cold winters, it contracts, and it really helps with the aging process. And that's really important for whiskey.
One of the things I learned when I was out visiting you guys is that, yeah, it's high desert, it's dry, 10% humidity, but that actually helps you in terms of keeping your grain fresh, doesn't it, when it comes to getting ready to distill?
Yeah, and that's what we're really fortunate, because in our area here, we have low humidity, which is actually good in the field because we can get the grain to dry down in the field. So a lot of places that have a lot of humidity or a lot of rainfall, a lot of times have a hard time getting the grain to dry enough to store for long periods of time in silos or, to be able to distill it as they need it. And so here we're able to get the grain to dry down in the field to 10, 12% moisture. And that way it'll store for long periods of time. If you harvest it at higher moisture content, you have mold, fungus, mildew, all kinds of problems. And a lot of places have those problems in the fields as well, which we've never had a mold, fungus, mildew problem in the fields because that lack of humidity really, kind of keeps it from growing.
I want to talk about the environmental aspect. One of the things that you guys have on the bottle, and you really sort of have to turn it upside down to look at it, is that the emphasis 5 generations of farming. And if you're good to the land will be good to you. In that high desert, we know about all the water problems out west. How do you guys cope with the water shortages and the water issues?
So we're fortunate because there's a reservoir here, and so the water flows through the rivers, collects in the reservoir, so that we can pull it from the reservoir as we need it. And so we're also in I wouldn't say a totally safe area. We do go through drought cycles every once in a while, but on a traditional long period of time, we have as much water as we need. But we're really fortunate too, because we farm a lot more acres. We grow a lot of alfalfa and other crops, as well as the wheat, rye, barley, and corn that's in our whiskeys. So we will always have enough water to at least grow wheat, rye, barley, and corn. We might have to sacrifice our alfalfa or anything like that. So we're really fortunate. This year, we actually had a 70% water year, which was relatively bad. The last 5 or 6 years, we've had either 100% or extra water. Like they just needed to get rid of it. There was so much extra water. So, we're really fortunate. Like I said, where we're at is just the ideal location for both water quantity, water quality, soil types. Our climate's just perfect. So we're really lucky.
the other thing you're near, and this was something we kind of laughed about while I was out there with the other folks, the other riders that were on this trip, the fact that you guys are basically pretty much next door to the Fallon Naval Air Station where the Navy's Top Gun fighter jocks train.
Right.
How often do you guys get buzzed over there?
Daily.
Yeah, all the time. It seems like we get at least helicopters every day. Every once in a while, jets will buzz right over us, and the big C-17s and the big airplanes and everything. But yeah, Top Gun moved from Miramar, in California to Nevada here, which what I believe it's either the biggest or the second biggest inland Navy base in the world. And you'd think it'd be weird to have a Navy base in the desert. But the reason for that is it's mainly for their airplanes and their aerial training. And there's a huge open area in the middle of Nevada where they can do all of their training. They have a lot of bombing ranges, and they do a lot of basically tactical training. So we actually, growing up, there's been a lot of people that worked at the Navy base that lived here on the farm, most of them pilots. And it's really neat hearing all their stories. But it really kind of brought a world view, growing as a little kid growing up on the farm, you don't get a lot of, you don't get a lot of culture or anything like that, but they brought that to us by them going around the world and me listening to their stories. It really helped define who I am.
It's really amazing just in our community, having the Fallon Naval Air Station here. And, my kids go to school with a lot of children that, their parents are in the Navy. They fly jets. Like, how cool is that? And our kids like, well, my dad and mom make whiskey.
Yeah.
And the other kids go, oh, wow, that's even cooler than what my dad does.
Yeah, our kids say that whiskey's yucky, so that's a good thing probably.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I would say they're still kind of young on that one. But the fun part would be if you can get those guys to buzz the warehouses every so often and just get close enough to maybe a little baby sonic boom.
Right.
You guys could create a Top Gun matured whiskey with the vibrations from the sonic booms as they fly overhead.
There you go.
Yeah, shake the warehouse a little bit. One time, and he totally wasn't supposed to do this, but one of the guys that lived here called me one time and said, hey, go outside. He was actually calling me from the jet. And I went outside and he buzzed the ranch. And just as he's buzzing the ranch, he went inverted. And he was just right upside down, right over me. And he was just waving and just flipped back over. And it happened so fast that I barely even saw him but it was so cool. He just flipped right over and went back. Man.
That's fun. Now, you could have gotten him with this. Fire in the hole.
Oh, yeah.
That's short.
Tell us about the corn cannon, guys.
Yeah, so we love doing fun things on the farm, and we wanted to do something that just was kind of neat, unique, but also we could go pick our own corn right from the field and have some fun with it. So we set up some targets in a field right by our house, and we all shot
corn. Picked the corn that morning, and it's really fun. I know that this was kind of Colby's vision, and I thought, you're crazy. People aren't going to want to do that, but it's become really popular.
Everybody loves to shoot corn.
Yeah.
I could see that becoming, we need a few more events, but between barrel rolling, the corn cannon, that could become the whiskey decathlon if we can come up with a few more events for distillers at the Bourbon Festival in Bardstown. Our pal Dave Kuhn says we need a whiskey called Buzz the Tower.
Yeah,
right.
And Americorn Gladiators.
Yeah.
Although I was going to call it a howitzer, but dad jokes and all that aside. But that's just part of something you guys just sort of cooked up on the farm, really sort of farm engineering, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're just looking, like I said, for something that we could do with the corn that's fun and interactive, and like what better way to shoot it, and so we kind of played around with the ideas of like a trebuchet. I can't even say it. Trebuchet. How do you say that, Mark?
Trebuchet. Catapult.
Catapult. Yeah. So we want to do a catapult, but corn's kind of small. If we had pumpkins or something like that, that would be fun. But
yeah, and I think you also got your potato gun out, and kids thought that was really cool.
Yeah,
that'd be cool if we could do it with corn.
Yeah.
This is something that only a small family-owned farm distillery could get away with, because if this were a big company, the lawyers in risk management would say, you want to do what?
Right.
Yeah.
All it's going to take is all all it take is one pipe exploding, and yeah, we're going to take out half of Fallon if that thing goes off. I did not go out there, Dave, to see what happens when the corn hits something, but yeah, I've got pictures of the corn coming right out of the cannon. Some stills that I shot out of there. Now, you can actually see the corn in its better usage in this video, and this really defines what distilling on the grain is as opposed to distilling off the grain. Let's talk about distilling on the grain, Colby. This is what you guys do, and this is your continuous still.
Yeah, so some distilleries, it's called lautering. So they filter out the liquid and they leave the solids behind, and they only distill the liquid. And we do it grain in, and we're firm believers that when you do it grain in, you get a lot more flavor and a lot more texture and a lot more just character to the whiskey. And so in the continuous stills, we leave the grain in, then we strip out the alcohol to about 45%. And then we only put that 45% alcohol back into the into the pot still. And so that's kind of that quality and quantity aspect. So we always want our first distillation to have the grain in it.
And that's chunks are literally pieces of corn and wheat and barley and rye that are sticking to the glass inside the watch window.
Yeah, they're what, like when you lauter, they're what would be left behind, and those go right through the stills. And then it's interesting, once it comes off of the continuous stills, that's when we actually separate the liquids and the solids. And the solids go to the dairy next door to us and get fed to the dairy cows. And then the liquid goes into our irrigation system because that liquid's really acidic. And that acidic liquid, we have a little bit of a higher pH in our soil. So that acidic liquid helps balance the pH in our soil so that we can grow a better crop. And so we're really able to utilize all those byproducts. And so we, instead of lautering it or taking the grains out before, we take them out after, actually.
And then the solids go to the dairy next door, and the cows love it. Every day.
Yeah, and then the cows make manure. Manure is the best fertilizer there is. We bring that back to the fields. We spread that on the fields. Has every available nutrient that a plant might need, and so we spread that on the field. So it's really like this nice little ecosystem circle that we have that we work. The dairy's not ours, but we really work close with them, and it's kind of a good deal for us because we sell them the spent grain, and then they give us all the manure back. So it's a pretty good deal.
I'm not going to say a word. Ashley, you came up with the design for these bottles, right?
I did. Yeah, I worked really closely with our design team, and absolutely love the way it turned out. So from the topper, I'll kind of do a little close up here. It's in the shape of a bolt, and that really represents something that you would see here on the farm. You guys can see that right there.
Yep.
When we were thinking, what shape did we want that topper? What did we want it to look like? What does it represent? One night I was cleaning Colby's pockets out, getting ready to throw his jeans in the washing machine, and I pulled out this bolt, and I thought, what would be better than to just stick that like right on top of the bottle? It's recycled metal. It's heavy. If you guys ever get the chance to feel it, hold it in your hand. It's not plastic. It's not wood. It's that recycled metal, very sturdy. And as you work your way down through the actual label itself, you'll see it wraps itself all the way around the bottle. And this represents an actual belt buckle and a belt that Colby wears all the time. It was passed down from his grandfather to his dad and then to Colby. And just a slight nod to our family heritage and where we came from and our future generations. The beautiful yellow color actually represents the corn growing in the field. So you can see just how closely that color is. And the corn is, 51% or more in bourbon. Ours is about 66. And that representation of the color is a good reminder of what we do and that we're farmers first. And then, like Mark mentioned, on the bottom, you'll see the be good to the land and the land will be good to you is along the rim, which isn't just a motto for us, but a way of life on the farm.
Yeah, that's really important to us because as farmers, I was really fortunate because the only way that I could have been a farmer is my father sold me the farm for what it was worth as a business, not necessarily the market value of it. And so it's really hard to become a farmer if you're not already, kind of born into it or independently wealthy already. And so, and my whole goal in life is to pass the farm on to our kids in as good or better condition than I received it in. And so that be good to the land will be good to you is a way that we live by, because if we don't take really good care of our environment, or really good care of our soil, or really good care of our natural resources, then we don't have a future as farmers. And so we really need to take care of everything so that our kids have something to continue on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pulling up some of these ears of corn out here, but your father helped you a lot with this in the terms of the construction and the design. He actually helped lay out the blueprints for the distillery, right, Colby?
Yeah, so he's really good on AutoCAD, and he just started saying, how tall do you want it? How wide do you want it? How do we want it? We had everything designed all by ourselves. It was all done in-house by us. And then we started laying all the underground utilities and everything. We did all ourselves. And so that really helped us to figure everything out on paper, obviously, before you just start building a building.
And I'm pulling up some of the shots. It's taking just a few seconds here to get some of this corn, but I wanted to show this corn. This is the field right across the road from the distillery. You can see the corn there, and didn't size that out quite right. Sorry about that. But
that's right.
When you're farming 2,500 acres and you say you only really needed about 500 of it for the distillery's needs, what do you do with the rest?
So the rest is all normally alfalfa. And so what's kind of unique or neat about the alfalfa is, once again, we're in a really good growing area. We have really hot days and cool nights, and it allows the plants to grow during the hot days, to breed during the cool nights. And so like our alfalfa goes to China, Dubai, Japan, Taiwan. It's going all around the world. And that's really kind of neat as a farmer to have your crop go around the world. But it's nothing like the grain for the distillery, because I never get to see the final product of the alfalfa. But with the grain and the distillery,
it's just feed, but it's like we don't know what type of animal or where it's going.
It's way more like it's so much more meaningful for us with the distillery, because we're taking our grain, we're actually creating something that we can share with you and a lot of other people. And that's a lot more meaningful for us to be able to showcase it. Ashley tells people, or I'll let you say.
Yeah, like none of the ingredients have ever left our possession until somebody purchased the bottle in our tasting room and takes it home. And so it's really fun to be able to share our lives in such a unique way here on the farm and with others that come to visit us.
We get occasional cheeky questions. This one from our pal Watchman 999 up in Canada. Is there any alcohol in the spent grain that the cows eat? If yes, please post some video.
Yeah, I always thought that'd be like making pre-made White Russians right from the dairy.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no alcohol. No. Yeah.
And Bill Ricker, probably a little, but not enough to matter compared to the weeds they're finding out in the field. Yeah, thanks, Bill. And Dave Kuhn also points out interesting bottle shape. Sort of reminds him of the Port Charlotte and Kilhoman type shapes.
I'll have to look at that. Yeah,
in a lot of ways. But I think the bottles look great. One of the things you guys did early on was make some gin and things to get by while the whiskey was maturing. But what I found interesting was that with the rye, you waited 5 whole years for it to mature before you ever sold a bottle of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was impressive because you sort of had to have the farm to make sure everything, to fund all the other operations and to fund the whiskey project, right?
Yeah. I always tell people it was easy for us to wait because we were tasting it out of the barrel every month or so. So we didn't have a hard time waiting. We knew it was good, and it just kept getting better.
And every year we would taste it, and I love whiskey, and I just said, we need to make more. And so every year we made a considerable amount more. But it gave me the confidence that we got to taste it every once in a while. But there was a while there where we were working really hard on the farm to help make every extra dollar we could make, doing a lot of work for other farms with our equipment and everything else, so that we could put
another truckload of barrels.
Buy wood for barrels, or whatever it took, and that really helped us to to get where we are today. We were hustling pretty hard there for a while.
But we did have a vodka gin. We did a fun barrel-aged gin. We even did an absinthe, which was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But we knew that our heart was really in the whiskey production, and that's where we wanted to end up and really, put out more whiskey and expand our distribution footprint.
Yeah, we always knew that we were a whiskey distillery. That was always my dream. But we knew that we didn't want to release a 2, 3, a young year-old whiskey. Yeah. And so we waited. Our bourbon and our rye were both The bourbon was an average of 5 years when we released it. The rye was 5+ years when we released it.
We have a serious question from our pal Watchman 999. Are you distributing internationally yet or just limited to U.S. retailers? And realistically, in the U.S., you're just limited to Nevada and California right now.
Yeah.
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 We're only in.
Yeah, we've got an e-commerce platform where we're able to ship to 30 states, but we are listed with the Whiskey Exchange. So, we do have a little bit of international distribution
The
there.
Whiskey Exchange is amazing. They can ship to a lot of different countries.
Yeah, they've got a great selection.
Yeah.
Except for Canada.
Except for Canada, right?
That's funny, but we even had some people in the United States say that they ordered our whiskey on the Whiskey Exchange. So it's kind of funny. It went from here to the UK and then back to the United States.
They were super fans.
Yeah.
Because that probably cost a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've seen their shipping prices, and with the duty and everything, it probably cost a fortune to do that. It would be just easier to probably have been cheaper to fly out to Reno and come see you guys.
That's a good point.
How many visitors do you get out there, since it is somewhat remote, in the mountains, an hour west of Reno, Lake Tahoe area?
Yeah.
But you get a few visitors, right?
We do, yeah. Our tasting room is open every Saturday, noon to 4. We get a really good crowd. People love to come out. They love to tour the distillery. We still do complimentary tours and tastings. If we're releasing a single barrel, we have lines outside the door, which is a lot of fun. Our last single barrel we released, we actually sold out in 10 minutes, but we still had a huge line. So we thought we have to release a second single barrel. And good thing we had one lined up. That sold out in probably 20 minutes.
I think it was like 12 or 13.
Yeah. So then I thought, oh my gosh, we have this third barrel, but we were kind of waiting, closer to the holidays. But we had all these customers there. We didn't want to let them down. So we released the third barrel. Which that was such a fun day. We had so many people out. The weather was perfect. They were enjoying themselves on the lawn, and this is a great day.
People were like in the back of their cars. People that got the first barrel were trading with people that got the second barrel.
Yeah.
And it was really a fun time.
Yeah.
When it came down to that third barrel, did you have to bottle it immediately?
Yeah.
Right. No, we did actually have a third barrel already bottled, but we were hoping to kind of release it towards the holidays, which now we get to go pick another barrel for the holidays. So it's all right.
We were trying to save that one, but we ended up, we couldn't wait.
And Dave Kuhn is asking, is there an event space that's part of your business plan? A lot of startup tasting rooms try to find whatever extra revenue streams they can. Having been out there, I would say probably not, but then I could be wrong. Are you doing events and things out there?
We're not doing events. I get a lot of requests for weddings, as Mark can contest. Like, we have a beautiful lawn, a really nice farmhouse that's over 100 years old, but we also live on site. So that's our house. And we do farm a lot. So think tractors and trucks and, employees full time, 7 days a week. When they harvest their hay, they're up at midnight all night. So this year we've really put our efforts towards expanding our distribution in California, Las Vegas, as opposed to just doing more events out at the ranch.
And you handle all of the marketing and the events and the business side of things, Ashley.
I do.
Tell me about that part of it and how you became a whiskey geek, because you were not originally a whiskey geek when all this started, right?
I had a love for American whiskey and I had a passion for really trying new things, but I wasn't really able to pull out tasting notes like I am now. And that's something that I think was acquired, and something I really learned tasting through barrels. Me and Colby and Russell, who manages our distillery and our distillery team, we taste through every single barrel, whether it's blended into our flagship bourbon or it's put aside for our single barrel program. And I think that that's really allowed my palate to mature and pull out all the fun tasting notes. And I gravitate more towards the fruity barrels. So I kick those aside. Colby and Russell like more of the spicy barrels, ones that taste like a rye whiskey more. What other tasting notes? Baking spices you guys like? Yeah,
it's really fun because it's amazing the variety. I mean, we get really creamy ones that have creamy mouthfeel. We get really dry feeling whiskeys. We get some that, some of them taste like they're Scotch style whiskeys or rye.
A little bit of smoke, rye. Maybe. Yeah.
It's really kind of fun for us to kick those out, because then a retailer can have something unique. And we've realized that our barrel program, a lot of people are seeking barrels from every retailer they can get one from, because they're fairly different.
you're trying something different with the barrel program at some point. You had an idea for not just a barrel pick, but a blend pick, right?
Yeah, so we do about 80% is in our flagship bourbon, 15% is in our rye production, and then 5% is something that Colby and Russell really created. And I'll let you talk. You can geek out on it because I can't even remember everything they've got going on.
We tell everybody it's 5% of our production, but 90% of the fun. And it's things like we have Scotch style whiskeys. We have so single malts. We have 100% corn malt. We have quad malts where we malted the wheat, rye, barley, and corn, and that's something we really didn't touch on yet. But we also malt right here on site. Mm-hmm. So we have our own malt house, and so we're able to malt corn, malt rye, malt wheat, and then obviously malted barley. And we made it's the same mash bill as our bourbon, but all 4 grains are malted, which is really kind of fun for us to play around with. We have a smoker. So we did smoked oat and rye. We did 5-grain bourbons with oats in it. 4-grain bourbons with like our normal bourbon is a 4-grain. So it's corn, rye, or corn, barley, wheat, and rye. We replaced the wheat with oats in one of them. We replaced the rye with oats in one of them. And, but the other thing that we did, I think that what you're asking, Mark, is we distilled each grain 100% by itself. So we have 100% rye, 100% wheat, 100% corn, and 100% malted barley. And what I want to do, and the oldest stuff that we did in decent quantities is probably 3 to 3.5 years old right now. So it'll be a few years till we can do this. But I want to make a store blend. So, you do a store pick where a store gets a couple hundred bottles from the barrel. A barrel pick. I want to do a blend where we send, a vial of wheat, rye, barley, and corn, and a syringe or something is what I'm imagining. And take 5% of this or 25% of rye, and you could actually create your own blend, and we can blend it together for a store. And it could be their own proprietary. They can either advertise what it is or not tell anybody, or there's a lot of ways that you can go with it. So I'm kind of excited about that in the next couple of years.
How would you label that? It would have to be a blended whiskey, right? Because you can't call it a bourbon, obviously, because they have to be distilled all together. But
yeah, right. So I think even if it's 51% or more corn, you couldn't call it bourbon because it didn't start off.
It wasn't a mash bill.
Yeah. Yep.
That would actually be almost like the Canadian style of making whiskey, where you do all the grains separately and then blend them to taste.
Yeah. So I think that'd be really fun to offer that to people, but we'll see. That's down the road.
What are the plans? You expanded the distillery last year to add production capacity, but at what point can you start expanding distribution and going further east?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're limited to what we can sell this year to what we distilled 5 years ago. As Colby mentioned, we won't release anything that's younger than 4 years old. We won't bottle it. So right now, we really just want to keep our current markets supplied. Things in Northern Nevada and Las Vegas have been crazy. Northern California has been great to us. We just launched in Southern California, but we do have plans for a third state, possibly next year, just to kind of see the market. We haven't officially figured out what state yet, but we've got a couple that are on our list.
But this year, we're producing about 80,000 cases, 9-liter cases. And I think when those, 5 years from now, we're going to have to be in all 50 states or a good majority of them eventually, but not quite yet.
If you're looking for a state, I know a state on the East Coast, sort of just a little bit south of New York, a little bit east of Pennsylvania. That would be a pretty good market for you. Just to put that bug in your ear. I think they call it New Jersey, something like that. Bob Wenting is joining us now from the Netherlands. We've also got Miroslav from Poland, Whiskey Jason from Germany. Hey. Dave Kuhn from the U.S. We've got at least 4 or 5 different countries represented here. Also, Graham Fraser from Speyside tonight, joining us from there. And I know Graham had a birthday, so happy birthday, Graham.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
I think this is it. As a matter of fact, I could be wrong about that. But just give me a sense of, and Ashley, I know you deal with this and sort of addressed this while we were out there, the whole logistics nightmare that we've had with COVID and getting supplies and getting these custom stoppers and getting the custom glass and the labels. It's crazy.
It's crazy. So right now we're ordering things about a year ahead of time. So if we need glass next year, we're ordering it now. We're putting down a 50% deposit. We're getting on their schedule. which is scary from a small business perspective because you're upfronting a lot of cash ahead of time, cash that you could probably use to run your business. But we can't sell it if we don't have bottles. So, the lead time on the glass is about a year. Labels have gotten out of control. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but we used to be able to order labels and get them here in 2 weeks. Now we're sometimes 2 months, which does put a whole, kink in all of our supply chain, whether we're sitting on a PO that our distributor needs or, we're trying to just get some product out the door. Mark is gone. There he is.
No, I'm here. No, one of the casualties of the webcast the other night was that there's a little frayed cable right here that I just discovered that is the power supply for the camera that I use.
Oh, no.
So we're running off batteries, and I was hoping the battery was going to hold out, but it didn't.
But you're back.
I'm back here.
But yeah, our toppers come from Argentina, and we have to have these made in Argentina. The medallion gets made in Argentina as well. They get sent down to Mexico City where the glass is produced. After the glass is produced, they apply the medallion. It's a lot. The boxes and the shippers come from a different company. But everybody has their own lead time.
It's crazy the logistics that COVID, like the nightmare that it's created, like shipping to try to get bottles shipped to us has been just crazy.
Freight,
they'll call us and say that a truck driver just left the truck in some random state, and they got to go try to figure out to get the truck and get us our shipment, and that's happened actually several times.
And as Dave Kuhn points out, solder on. Yes, that's the next task, is to fix that connector myself. Fortunately, I do remember how to use a soldering iron. Whiskey Canuck says some Americans like to call Canada the 51st state if you're looking for ideas. If you're looking for another state to add to. But that's going to go over really well between however different many provincial liquor agencies and distribution groups and all that. So the fun thing I want to see, what has been the most enjoyable thing? What's the most fun that you've had with this? And what have you learned about yourselves from making whiskey?
It's hard to pick just one. I like the barrel picks. I personally love, when we take our barrels and we kick out our favorites and then we present, 5 or 6 to a retailer. I have my favorite in there. Colby might have his favorite. We try not to influence the retailer, but when they do make a pick and then they share that with their customers, and I get to see on social media, their tasting notes, their thoughts on it. I love that full circle approach.
And that's what I was going to kind of see. I really enjoy like when you came out to the ranch to be able to show you what we've worked really hard on. And it's almost like, it's all of our hard work finally paying off. We spent 5 years before we even released a whiskey making it, but we couldn't let people try it or anything like that. So it's kind of fun for me, to when it finally leaves us to let other people to try it and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Wending, I know Bob joined us late. Any chance on exporting your whiskey to Europe? It is available through the Whiskey Exchange as long as they have it in stock, Bob. So you might be able to get it in the Netherlands. They should be able to ship it to you if they still have it. Dave Kuhn wants to know, what's the best thing about living in Nevada?
I just like
Nevada, not Nevada. That's
Nevada.
Yeah. I just love it. There's really a sense of community, and we live in a small town. And so we really know a lot of our local people here, and it's fun to go to the restaurant and know half the people in the restaurant and for me, and to say hi to everybody. And it's really like a sense of community.
I personally like our proximity to Lake Tahoe. So we're about an hour and a half drive from the ranch to Lake Tahoe, which is a complete change of scenery. It could be 105 at the ranch, and you go up to Tahoe. It's mild. It's 80 degrees. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, it's even better, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. It's a little whiter.
Yeah.
How much snow are you getting these days? And are you seeing the impact from climate change on what you're getting in terms of snowpack up there?
This last year was a little bit lighter, but the 3 or 4 years before that, there was a tremendous amount of snow. And that's why we had more than
We had a lot
enough
of
water.
almost flood warnings for people that lived really close to the rivers as it flowed down.
Yeah, there was one point, I think it was 2015 or 16.
It was 17.
Oh, 17. Every year starts to seem like the same, but all the farmers got together and we got all of our tractors and we built a giant ditch, and it was about 35 miles long because it kind of went around the whole town.
It's
because
so much water. They were just like dumping it in the desert. They were just trying to divert it.
And so we diverted it kind of around the whole town, because if we didn't do that, the reservoir was full and it would have started to, over capacity. It'd start to flow over the overflow boards, and the river goes right through town, and it would have flooded out the entire town. And so it was kind of neat. We ran 24 hours a day, all these tractors, for it was probably 2.5 months building this ditch.
People are also wondering, how the wildfires in the Lake Tahoe area and further west in Northern California have affected you. I know the air in Reno you could see the smoke still. And the hotels we were at, there were firefighters from California staying at our hotel.
Yeah. And
it's been scary. And today is actually a pretty smoky day as well. We'll have bad days and good days, more bad days, it feels like lately, just when the winds shift. But we're getting it from the Dixie Fire as it kind of comes up over Nevada and kind of goes down, swoops down towards the middle. And then we're also getting it from the Caldor Fire.
Which is the one by Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
Are you guys worried at all about wildfires in your area? There's basically not a lot of trees, but there's a lot of scrub and stuff out there.
No, and that's the stuff like, the scrub and everything. That's the stuff that's easy to contain. I mean, you can take a bulldozer or a disc or a tractor and make a fire line and stop it relatively easy. It's when you have giant trees that are really hard to stop it,
And you're on the eastern side of the mountains, so the trees are on that western side. They get the drafts and everything and the winds as they come up over the mountains, which is why you get a lot of dry snow. Most of it falls on the eastern side in Lake Tahoe, and that's where the fires are, where a lot of the rain falls, and that's why you guys are in the desert on the other side of the mountains, right?
Yep. So I don't think we have a fire problem here, especially with all the green, green fields all around us and everything else.
What's the future for you guys? What do you want to do next in terms of making whiskey? We talked about that quad malt and the blend. What are you trying to work on next? Is it just producing enough stuff to keep everybody happy, or at least to, I know we're not talking world domination yet, but that's the goal eventually, right?
Yeah, I think I'd like to see us do, we're trying to keep back some barrels. I'd like to do a 8-year-old bourbon, maybe a bottled and bond 8-year-old.
Yeah. And for me, like what I love about it is like I said, we're showcasing the grain. So a lot of people ask, are we going to do like a secondary aging, like a wine barrel or a, sherry cask or what, anything else. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's great whiskeys, but it takes away the flavors that naturally come from the grain. And so instead of doing that, I love playing around with the different varieties of grain and mash bills and things like that, ways that we can showcase the actual grain and the different flavors that the grain produce. And so we're going to release some like we call them our single grain series. So we'll have like 100% oat whiskey, 100% wheat whiskey. Our rye whiskey already is 100% rye. And those things. We also have a malted series that we're kind of working on that
we're hoping to release the single grains here in a couple months.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
And then after that'll be the malt series, but we have all the malt. So those are what I like to do and kind of fun for me.
And that would include an American single malt for the first time too, right?
Yep. So the American single malt, and then we have a 100% corn malt, which is really interesting and fun. And
you like that one, huh, Mark?
Yeah, I did. I remember that. Yeah, because first time I really ever tried a corn malt, because most people don't realize you can malt corn.
Right.
Yeah. So all grain is a seed, you can malt any of it. Yeah.
And I want to thank you both for joining us and for having me out there this week. But one of the things you sent us back with, and this is going to go into our next guest, is the honey, because you guys also keep bees out there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of bees here on the ranch. They're not really our bees,
alfalfa honey.
There's a huge amount of bees needed to pollinate all the trees in the Central Valley of California. And so they take them there in the spring, and in the kind of in the it's even before, like early summer, they bring them here. And it's kind of just to keep them alive, because their real value is pollinating the trees in California. And so they bring them here, and then we get all the honey that comes off of all the hives. And so it's really this beautiful, you see it right there. It's really a dark, I mean, it almost looks like a bourbon colored honey.
Oh,
it's darker than you see in the store. And there's a lot more minerals and nutrients in it. It's really good.
So one of our favorite things to make is our take on the classic cocktail, the Gold Rush. We call it the ranch hand. So it calls for honey, and we use the fresh honey right from the farm, some lemon juice, really nice, refreshing cocktail with the bourbon.
I posted the recipe for that on our social media feeds the other day. So we'll have that, and I'll post it on the cocktail collection on our website. Yeah. Bill Ricker is asking, corn malt, is that naturally malted corn or enzyme malt? It's all natural, right?
It's naturally malted, yeah. So we sprout it just like you would, anything else.
And yes, we're going to the air races on Sunday,
yes,
right?
Whiskey Canuck asked about the Reno air races.
Yep. So we'll be there Sunday. We're kind of excited. We're going to take the kids.
And how old are your kids now?
5 and 8. So we've got a little boy who's 5 and a little girl who's 8. So kindergarten and 3rd grade.
Yeah.
How do they tell their friends what you two do for a living?
I think they just think it's normal. They grew up with it. And so I think that they think everybody has a farm and a distillery, and they're pretty natural about it.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah, I like
Winning's going, you could make mead and a distilled mead or a mead distillate. That could be interesting.
Yeah. We actually have a lot of
more ideas.
Yeah, we have a whiskey barrel that we filled up with honey probably a year and a half ago. And we've been aging honey in a whiskey barrel for a long time.
Real honey barrel.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So they have honey barrels. This is a actual honey barrel.
I think I saw that one in the warehouse.
Yes,
that's the one you had out in the middle of the warehouse that said real honey barrel on it. I didn't realize that's what you meant.
Well, it's funny because it's that's kind of an inside joke, because when I found a barrel I really liked to kick out for the barrel program, I would sign it. I would write honey barrel, and then I'd sign it. The honey barrel is like the honey hole, the good one, And then we filled up a barrel of honey, and the guys are like, "What do you want me to write on this?" I said, "Put honey barrel on it." He's like, "We already have like 20 or 30 of those over there." And I said, "Oh, you're right. Better write real honey barrel on that one."
Yeah. Don't want to confuse them, because if you dump that in, you're going to wind up having to do like Wild Turkey did with Forgiven a few years ago.
Yeah, no kidding.
Whiskey Canuck points out, that sounds interesting. Up here, maple syrup aged in whiskey barrels is pretty popular. So,
yeah. And that's, we've had
the inspiration from that for sure.
We've had a lot of bourbon barrel aged maple syrup, and we thought, well, we don't have maple trees or anything like that here, but we got a lot of honey, so we can kind of take a play on that.
Well, I want to thank you guys for your hospitality this week, for having me and a bunch of my colleagues out there. Excuse me. And for sharing your story with us, not just this week, but today as well. Ashley and Colby Frey from Frey Ranch Distillers and Farmers plus Distillers, to get the farm part. The farm part is the most important part. Without the farm, you don't have the distillery, right?
Right.
Yep.
So I want to touch on this honey for just a second more. I want to thank you guys for joining us, because honey and the bees are critical in terms of what we deal with on a regular basis. And I had the chance a few days ago to talk with some folks from Aberfeldy. Our friends Gareth Howells, one of the brand ambassadors, and also Beth Behrs. You may know her from the show Two Broke Girls and other TV shows. They're doing an interesting project with honey and with Aberfeldy that I wanted to share with you guys. And I recorded this interview with them a few days ago, and I want to play it back for you now. I've become a bee nerd too, right?
It's an equal nerdum over here. There's the equal whiskey and bees. I love them both. My husband and I have been hobbyist beekeepers for the past probably 7 or 8 years now. My husband's been doing it even longer than me. And then avid whiskey, Scotch family, Irish Catholic, a husband who was on Mad Men. So he knows his alcohol and is known for having fun and being a connoisseur as well. So yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm surrounded by friends and family who love bees and whiskey and scotch.
We'll get into that in just a second, but Gareth, explain what Aberfeldy is doing and has been doing for the last couple of years.
So, I mean, Aberfeldy, Highland Scotch, founded in 1898 by the two sons of whiskey leader and visionary John Dewar. 2018, as part of our advocacy programming with Aberfeldy, Georgie Bell, who was our old global head or global advocate for single malt whiskey, started a program called Barrels and Bees. Now, Aberfeldy is known for this honeyed richness that is produced within the whiskey from the distillery. And it's that connection that led us down a path of looking to work, not just within North America, but also globally with local apiaries and beekeepers to try and use their honey with our whiskey to make delicious cocktails, but also provide an educational platform where we had the ability to talk to people, not only within the trade, but consumers, to just educate them around the plight of the honeybee and how we can really create environments to let them not only survive, but thrive, and then continue that messaging throughout all of the advocates that we've got across North America.
And across the world, too, in general, right?
Across the world, you'll find that Aberfeldy globally, and anywhere where we have advocates and Aberfeldy is represented, we have this Barrel and Bees programming. Because honey is distinctly different depending on where it comes from. The sheer nuances in the varietals that exist, whether you're talking about New York State, whether you're talking about all the states in the US, or in fact globally, each honey is distinctly different. When you look at 100% natural raw honey, that in turn will give completely different cocktails when you use that honey. So it's really about connecting and educating the people that we work with to their local beekeepers and their apiaries, just really to try and help them survive and do the amazing work that they do for the bees.
Beth, I want to bring you back into this because you mentioned that you and your husband are amateur beekeepers, and this is something anybody can really do, right? You don't have to have a big old farm to do this.
Absolutely. I mean, you can even do it in New York City on a rooftop. It can be anywhere. I would say, we've been so lucky in the series I did for Aberfeldy, Phoebe Piper, who is our beekeeping mentor. I think it's really important in your community to find your local beekeeping group or a local beekeeper who can teach you, because it's definitely not difficult to keep bees, but you want to make sure that they're safe and healthy, because as you mentioned, with colony collapse and all the issues facing bees right now, we have to do our part in the safest, best way to give them the best possible chance to thrive. And also you get honey in the process. So you're not only helping Mother Nature and making greater whiskey, but you're also helping to save the bees. And yeah.
Well, I will acknowledge that I am sipping on I think I bottled this one at the distillery when I was there a few years ago. Matter of fact, yeah, because I remember my signature on there of a 1994 cask of Aberfeldy, and I'm getting all sorts of great honey notes on this one as well. Beth, tell us how you got into whiskey. You mentioned being in an Irish Catholic family and growing up out on the East Coast, and that sort of leads to whiskey, doesn't it?
It sure does. I have a lot of pictures of me as a baby with holding like whiskey glasses, like as a joke that my parents, were giving me. I have my grandfather, my dad, and then when I married my husband, also Irish Catholic. So we come from a long line of whiskey drinkers. In college, I wasn't like most people in college, I discovered alcohol and was like kind of whatever the cheapest I could afford at the time. But then when I met my husband, he was at the Emmys and all this stuff for Mad Men. And so they were getting a lot of opportunities to taste like the best whiskeys and scotches. And so he sort of really introduced me to honestly kind of being a whiskey nerd and having such an appreciation. Like you said, nature is my heart, everything about it. And so the fact that like whiskey comes from nature and that there's this parallel and that there's so many different nuances to it is what I get really excited about. And also I just love that, like, after a long day filming on set, I just did it last night, to come home. I like my whiskey neat or in a cocktail if it's like an afternoon barbecue, like an herbs honey smash like we had in the show. But I really like to just have a neat glass of whiskey before bed. A little nightcap is my favorite thing to do, especially when it's something that I know the history of or that I know has meaning to me in some way, like Aberfeldy does.
Have you had a chance to get to the distillery yet?
I haven't, but I would love to. So Gareth,
You
maybe
need
you
to.
can hook that up. Hook a
I
girl
think we
up.
can, I think as life gets back to normal, we can definitely look to
Right.
make that happen for you.
That'd be amazing. I'd be very excited by that.
You mentioned the herb honey smash cocktail, and we have the recipe for that on the WhiskyCast website in the cocktail collection. But Gareth, tell us about this cocktail kit for the herb honey smash that's available right now through reservebar.com.
So this is really exciting. So on the 21st of this month, Aberfeldy announced a multi-year partnership with an organization, a charity called the Bee Conservancy, who specialize working across North America in effectively educating around the life and plight of honeybees, but then also about food equality and the importance that bees play within the ecosystems that we need as humans to live in. But more than that, they also specialize in providing urban environments for honeybees across North America. So what we've done is in line with that partnership, and it was initially a $15,000 philanthropic donation that we made to the Bee Conservancy to help them continue their work. As September is National Honey Month, and it's the 1st of September today, we partnered with a number of incredible accounts across all of North America, asking them to feature a herbed honey smash, which is basically Aberfeldy's version of a honey smash using our whiskey and then local honey in each of the markets that we have ambassadors in. And for every one of those cocktails that is sold, tagged on Instagram with the hashtag of Barrel and Bees, we're donating an additional $20 to the Bee Conservancy to help them continue their efforts, up to $10,000. Now, we have ambassadors all over the country. We've got New York, we've got Chicago, Miami, San Francisco, LA. We're putting beehives in Tampa and DC as well. But for those people who don't live in those areas, we've created this incredible kit that's available through Reserve Bar. So at home, if you order one, you can make a herb honey smash. You can take that photo, you can throw it on Instagram, and hopefully make us donate another $20. So this is really about involving as many people as possible. As part of this as well, we've worked with Beth and the Bee Conservancy to make these incredible videos and educational content so people can have a look and find out a little bit more about the relationship that we're developing with the Bee Conservancy and the work that all of these local beekeepers and apiaries are doing. And Beth's been phenomenal in helping us spread that message. So don't be afraid to log on to the microsite, aberfeldy.com, have a look, get a kit from Reserve Bar, and join in the fun.
Beth, tell us about doing these videos.
Oh, it was so funny. You know, usually you have a long day on set and you're ready to go. And I know anyone who was on set with me that day, we were in the hive as the last part of the day of shooting. And my publicist literally had to pull me away to leave because I just wanted to stay with the bees. I find beekeeping, you know, bees are, a lot of people get scared and they, you know, have been stung before, but they're actually like very gentle. And I think the only way, they're only going to sting if they're threatened because they die after they sting. So they're only doing it to protect their hive or the queen when they feel threatened. So going with Phoebe and learning how to sort of calm yourself and open the hive. And then when they're all swarming around, there's actually this sort of meditative, sort of spiritual healing part of beekeeping. And I don't think a lot of people who have never been in a hive can experience that. But I think on the day that we shot, even the camera, everybody who was on set just felt this sort of connection to these bees and felt so comfortable. I mean, we had our DP wasn't even wearing the suit. He was like, they're Italian bees. They're super gentle. And everybody was just in there loving on the bees. And they were great actors. I thought they did a great job on camera, all of the bees, the 50,000 of them that made their debut. And it was so much fun. And I love brands like Aberfeldy that make it their mission to do something to help Mother Earth. Because as we all know, we wouldn't be here. Most of our food comes from pollinate. Like we wouldn't have food if we didn't have the bees. So I just love that I can partner with an organization that does such amazing work.
Did the bees get union scale and qualify for their SAG cards?
I heard that they got a higher rate than any of us. And so, you know, I have to talk to their agent and see how that all happened and went down. Maybe I need to switch agencies and go to the bee managers.
Well, I joke about that because anybody who has kids remembers the bee movie from a few years ago where the bees went on strike because they were exploited and all that, and all the pollination stopped. And I'm going, wait a second, we got to compensate the bees for doing this movie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, they're stars now. I mean, they're all over YouTube and big hits. So hopefully they get other jobs after this.
Now, just to throw something out there for those people who might be interested in this, and I'm going to suggest this because not everybody has access to or has good connections to a beekeeper, but every county in the United States has a cooperative extension service that's run by one of the state universities, usually your land-grant university. In Pennsylvania, it's Penn State. New Jersey, it's Rutgers. Every state has one, but the cooperative extension service is sort of your key to finding out about how you can raise bees. They can put you in touch with the right people if you can't find somebody on your own. So I just want to sneak that plug in there because it is possible to raise bees in your backyard. And as you point out, even on a rooftop in New York City.
Absolutely. And it's less, work. They're really self-sufficient. So it's not, it's not like walking a dog every morning. They don't require the kind of tending to that, like I have a horse and a dog and all these animals that definitely require more. You go in every couple of weeks, you're making sure everything's going safe. There's, diseases you have to look out for. But a local beekeeper or organization, like you just mentioned, can definitely get you set up. It's not complicated. There's a million books out there that also can help, and internet classes. Now a lot of, because of COVID, they're doing a lot of internet workshops on beekeeping that I've actually been doing too, because it's just so much fun to learn more. The deeper you go, the cooler it is. And like you were saying, even honey, of course, it affects the taste of the whiskey depending on the region, And so even Phoebe, for example, who is our beekeeping mentor in this video series we did, her honey from Malibu tastes different than our honey that was in the Hollywood Hills because of the local flora and fauna that was like around the area. So it's also fun to do honey tastings with your local beekeeper friends and see how it varies.
And you can do honey and chocolate tastings, honey and whiskey tastings.
Whiskey tastings, yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you from experience that honey smells a lot sweeter than a cat box in terms of keeping pets under control.
Amen. And actually, bees, they don't, a lot of people are like, well, what if I have kids in my backyard or dogs? But bees actually fly up and away, 5 miles away. So yes, in that contained part of their hive that they're flying out of, but they're not going to be, you're not going to get a hive surrounding your pool or your kid. You don't have to worry about that sort of danger, because that was my concern when we first decided to keep bees was, well, what if there's bees all the time and we have a little friends with kids over? But they fly up and away, and they don't hurt you. Like I said, they're very kind most of the time if you're not threatening them. So
they don't want to mess with you if you're not messing with them.
Absolutely.
Very simply.
Yes.
And you can teach the kids about how to protect nature.
Yes. That's so important.
Gareth, I know you have a new expression coming to the U.S., the latest in the French cask series, the 18-year-old Aberfeldy. I'm going to spring this one on you because we hadn't talked about this ahead of time. What can you tell us about that one?
So, our core range with Aberfeldy, we've always got the 12, the 16-year-old, which is finished in Oloroso, and the 21. But Stephanie McLeod, she's the master of malts at Aberfeldy Distillery, and in fact, all of our other 5 distilleries within the Bacardi portfolio as well. Every year we have a couple of special releases. So last year we had an 18-year-old Aberfeldy that was finished in Polyac red wine casks. We also had a 24-year-old exceptional cask and an exceptional cask 20, or an exceptional release 20-year-old as well, which is finished in Sauternes. This year, coming up very soon, should be around about November, it will be available. We have an 18-year-old Aberfeldy, which will be finished in Côte Rôtie. Now, just quickly, as we talk about casks, Mark, and this is something that should resonate with you, as I know that you have been to the distillery in Scotland. As part of what we've been doing this year with the Bee Conservancy, we actually shipped over a number of casks directly from the distillery, and then working with the Bee Conservancy and another charitable partner based in Gowanus in Brooklyn called Brooklyn Woods, an incredible charity in terms of the work that they do locally within the New York community. We converted those barrels into effectively barrel gardens, which are going to be shipped to 16 different accounts across North America. Because one part about the Bee Conservancy's work that I didn't mention is effectively their creation of habitats suitable for honeybees to not only pollinate, but also feed on as well. So these barrel gardens through the Bee Conservancy in Brooklyn Woods are being shipped all over the country. We've got a couple going out to LA, a couple San Francisco. We've got 4 which are going to be positioned in New York as part of the programming, just to really help expand the reach and explain the work that Aberfeldy is doing in conjunction or partnership with the Bee Conservancy, and of course with Beth as well. So it's very exciting stuff. So if we ever in a million years thought the bees were scary and terrible, we would not be putting these gardens on rooftops in various metro locations around the US. But yeah, the 18-year-old, just to get back, I haven't tried it yet, but it's going to be an 18 finished in coat roti. But we're really looking forward to this because the last version of this, of course, was picked as a top 10 whiskey advocate pick. So, I mean, you can only just imagine the excitement that we have for when these bottles hit North American shores.
And Stephanie is a wonder when it comes to blending whiskeys and putting together different casks to pull out those flavors. So if she's put her seal of approval on this, it's got to be good.
I mean, it's worth mentioning. I mean, when we talk about Stephanie, I mean, she truly is a powerhouse within the industry, working across not only the blends, but single malts as well. And she's being recognized for not only the innovation work that she's putting in with the whiskeys that she creates, but the historic work she's done as well. I mean, the first female ever to win the IWC Master Blender of the Year award in 2018. She wins it again in 2019. She just won it again. And I mean, that's 3 years in a row. And the first female ever to be awarded is quite a phenomenal leader of our ship. So anything that Stephanie has her hand in, we get very excited about.
Beth, do you have your room in your backyard for a barrel garden?
I actually was going to say, so Phoebe grabbed it for me. I forgot. I didn't have a big enough car and Phoebe had a truck. So I actually have one of the barrels to plant. I'm a big garden nerd as well. So that's also something people can do, is plant native plants or flowers in their garden to attract bees, is another way of helping to save the bee population. But yes, I love my little barrel garden that's about to go down. It's going to be awesome.
Gareth, I got room in my backyard for one because we've got a bunch of tiger lilies and other wildflowers and stuff growing back there. And a barrel garden would look really good back there, I think. Hint, hint.
I'd imagine it would. I love this. You guys aren't asking for too much. So far, we've got a trip to Scotland and we've got a barrel garden. Okay,
I've been to Scotland. I'm not asking for the expensive stuff.
I'll see what we can do for you. I'm sure there's going to be a couple kicking around after we've done this.
I'm kidding, Gareth. I'm kidding, of course. But thank you both for doing this. And Beth, you mentioned your husband and his whiskey nerddom. You mentioned he was on Mad Men. Tell us who your husband is, just for those who are not familiar.
His name's Michael Gladys. He played Paul Kinsey on Mad Men. He smoked a pipe all the time, wore a lot of sweater vests. If you look at him, and you've seen Mad Men, you'll know right away. But yeah, thanks to him, I'm such a whiskey nerd, and my whole entire family.
I got to ask, have you picked a favorite yet, or do you have a go-to whiskey besides Aberfeldy?
Besides Aberfeldy, I really like Lagavulin. That was sort of the first one. My husband's mother, that's her favorite. And so that was sort of the first one I was introduced to with him. But my family also, I grew up around a lot of Jameson in my family. So probably when I was like younger and first tried alcohol, my first one was probably Jameson. But yeah, I like how Aberfeldy, though, I was just telling Gareth this earlier, like, there's something, we've been drinking a lot of it this summer because I feel like it's so approachable. It's been really nice when we have people over, like in an early evening sort of backyard hang, just neat. It's just been so nice I've really been enjoying it this summer. It's been hot here and I just feel like it's been going really well with sort of the whole summer vibe. So
Aberfeldy 12 has been one of those whiskeys over the years that I have always recommended when somebody asks, how can I get my friends into whiskey? Aberfeldy 12, because as you mentioned, it is easy, it's approachable, there's no smokiness to it, and it's sweet enough that you can get somebody to like it and drink it without scaring them off with the Lagavulin smoke. But if you love Lagavulin, more power to you, because that's one of my favorites as well.
I feel like it's like it depends on the day. You want the smoky or the peaty in front of like a fire on a cold thing, or LA. There's something about the bees in the backyard and your Aberfeldy and your friends coming over for summer afternoon hangs. It's all. I mean, there's never not a bad time to drink whiskey. It's I'm always down.
We'll wish you best of luck with the wildfires out there, because the smokiness would make the Lagavulin work better this time of year too, with all the air and with all the smoke in the air from the wildfires. So stay safe out there.
Thank you. Yes.
That's my interview from earlier this month with Beth Behrs and Gareth Howells from Aberfeldy. And Colby, Ashley, thank you for being so patient and sticking around for all that. You didn't have to stick around for the whole interview.
I loved it. Yeah, that was great.
And some comments here. Dave Kuhn, Lagavulin outside in crisp weather is hard to beat, especially the Distillers Edition. Also, Watchman 99. I wonder if Lagavulin 16 and Aberfeldy 12 would blend nicely. I'm not going to try that one, but if you want to try that with your whiskey, go right ahead. But thanks for joining us. We're going to call it a night now. It's an hour and 13 minutes that you'll never get back of your life again. But thank you for joining us tonight. Thanks to Colby and Ashley Frey from Frey Ranch Distillery. Continued good luck and success with these whiskeys. This is the straight bourbon, the single barrel Distillers Reserve. And if you look at the opposite, the green labeled Frey Ranch Rye.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always curious about a lot of distilleries label their ryes with green whiskey, green labels. And I'm curious, why did you pick green for this one?
Yeah. When we were working on the label, we wanted to use green. Everybody uses green for a rye, but for us, it really represented the color of the rye growing in the field. So after it's planted, it really is just this beautiful, it almost looks like a grass, but as it matures, it turns into like more of that straw amber color. But when it's growing, it's a beautiful green.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And as Watchman 99 says, best of luck on your enterprise. Continued success. And thank you again for your hospitality this week. And we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Bye. Thank you.
And that's it for tonight, gang. For the Happy Hour Live webcast, we'll have the podcast version coming up midweek. If you joined us late tonight for any reason, don't forget to join us next week, 5 p.m. New York time, for the next edition of our Happy Hour Live webcast. Until we meet again, I'm Mark Gillespie. Good night, everyone.